Economic instability. Instability is not good for an economy. It's normal for an economy to go through regular ups and downs. This is the economic cycle. However, if these ups and downs are particularly large or particularly frequent, this can cause problems for an economy. Governments can try and control these ups and downs to a certain extent, but some things will be beyond their control. Economies can suffer from demand-side shocks or supply-side shocks. An economy might start to shrink or grow because it's affected by a demand-side shock, which can cause aggregate demand to rise or fall. So just note there, demand-side shocks can be positive or negative, or by a supply-side shock, which can cause aggregate supply to rise or fall. These shocks can be domestic or global. For example, demand-side shocks. If consumer confidence is boosted due to house prices rising, this will increase consumer demand. Or, globally, if a country's major trading partners go into a recession, this may significantly reduce demand for the country's exports. Examples of supply-side shocks. A poor harvest reduces the supply of food, increasing its price, and reduces the economy's capacity. Another example, the discovery of a major new source of a raw material will greatly reduce its price and increase its supply, increasing the capacity of the economy. So, my students, I suggest that you have a look at the notes you've been provided with lots of examples of demand side and supply side shocks. Instability can be caused by animal spirits. According to classical economic theory, economic agents, for example, people or firms or governments, always act rationally. In fact, people often seem to act very irrationally. Keynes used the term animal spirits to describe how human behaviour is often guided by instincts and emotion rather than economic realities. For example, the following are common danger signs for an economy. They often start to emerge during a boom, but are followed shortly after by a bust and are created, at least partly, by animal spirits. So first, excessive growth in credit and levels of debt. When credit is cheap and customers are feeling confident, they often spend more and accumulate debt. This can increase AD, and lead to higher inflation. This inflation can lead to higher interest rates, which could mean firms delay investment projects and become more cautious, storing up problems for an economy. High levels of debt also mean that if consumers lose confidence for any reason, they're likely to greatly slow down their spending for fear of not being able to pay off their loans. It also means they'll have less money to spend in the future, as they're spending more money repaying debts, including the interest on those debts. Second example, we have destabilising speculation and asset price bubbles. Speculation is when people buy assets such as houses or shares and hope to sell them for a profit later. Speculators often assume that an increase in the price of an asset means that its price will continue to increase in the future. This prompts further buying of the good and further price increases, leading to further buying and further price increases, and so on. This is called the herding effect. And this can be used to explain why this behaviour may occur. Herding describes how people follow a crowd in the belief that if everyone else is doing something, then it must be the right thing to do. However, all of the above, this herding behaviour and speculation, leads to asset price bubbles, where prices increase way beyond the asset's true value. Eventually, the bubble bursts and asset prices fall. When this happens, people's optimism and confidence can disappear. If people start to fear they're losing money, they might start to sell assets, leading to further price decreases and further selling, and so on. Herd-like behaviour in reverse. Property and shares are often affected by asset price bubbles, and the effect of a sudden fall in UK house prices, for example, can be dramatic. As people feel less wealthy and less confident, they start to save instead of spend, and this can lead to a downward spiral in the economy. Sustainable growth is difficult to achieve. Sustainable economic growth means making sure the economy keeps growing now and in the future without causing problems for future generations. Sustainable growth relies on a country's ability to expand output every year, find a continuous supply of raw materials, land, labour and so forth, to continue production, find growing markets for the increased output so it's always being bought, reduce negative externalities, for example pollution, to an acceptable level so they don't hamper production, doing all the above things at the same time as many other countries who are pursuing the same objective. So there's many other countries trying to do A to D. The problem is, if some countries are doing it better than, say, the UK, well, obviously, sustainable growth is going to become problematic. It's very hard to achieve. To be able to achieve sustainable growth, countries will need to develop renewable resources. Non-renewable resources will run out, and for growth to be sustainable, a continuous supply of raw materials is necessary. Countries will also need to innovate to create new technologies that reduce negative externalities such as pollution and the degradation of resources such as land or rivers, without stopping output from expanding. A country that achieves sustainable growth will gain long-term benefits to society. It can more easily plan ahead, since it can be more confident about its long-term economic prospects. It's really important at this point to know about the UK's recent macroeconomic performance, particularly for exams as well as general knowledge. So here's a few things to note here. From 2000 to 2008, the UK enjoyed continuous GDP growth of on average of just under 3% each year. However, in 2008, the UK went into a recession that lasted for several months and was followed by a long slowdown. During the recovery, the UK economy went through short bursts of growth followed by slowdowns. It almost went back into recession in 2012. From 2013 onwards, the UK has had much more consistent GDP growth, and by 2014, GDP returned to the level it was just before the recession, obviously suggesting the recovery is complete. Between 2000 and early 2015, the rate of inflation in the UK, as measured by CPI, has been quite steady. Generally, inflation has been between 0.5 and 3%. There have been some exceptions to the study level of inflation. On a couple of occasions, inflation rose to above 5%, well above the government's 2% target. This happened just at the start of the recession in 2008 and again in 2011. However, then inflation fell again and remained between 0 and 3% for some time. Unemployment in the UK remained quite low between 2000 and 2008, between 1.4 and 1.7 million. Between 2008 and 2011, unemployment rapidly rose, reaching above 2.7 million, an unemployment rate of 8%. Since then, unemployment has fallen to record lows. At the time of this video, 2019, it is about 4.8% unemployment. Finally, the UK has had a current account deficit in its balance of payments for the whole period between 1984 and 2014. The deficit was at its largest during the period towards the end of 2014. The UK economy is currently dominated by its service sector, which accounts for approximately 77% of GDP. Manufacturing, on the other hand, now accounts for just 10% of British GDP.